Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the History of Fan Anime. I'm your host, William Chow, and today's episode, again, another interesting episode about interviews. I've got an interview with more of my friends that from the past, and we would talk about older times, different things about anime, and of course, some of the history that has passed along the way. All right. Before I begin, I'd like to remind people to go down below and click like and click subscribe. Even if you want to leave a comment below about this particular video and some opinions that you have, by all means, that does help the algorithm for YouTube. If you're interested in supporting me financially, I have the links for the super thanks as well as the PayPal and Patreon links below, where you can subscribe and get the special content that I cannot post here on YouTube. Again, there's a list with the link below of all the various different episodes I have for the History of Fan Anime, as well as the extra episodes that are available to the subscribers. And then it covers a lot of the content that, again, just YouTube just won't allow me to talk about. So, all that the extra content is there. All right. Okay. So without further delay, let's begin.
Most people, wherever they live and work, wherever they end up, can get into a situation where they can take things for granted. Because you're busy working, eking out an existence or life, and you really don't think about what it took to get there and then come back.
Yes.
So I was down there for 7 years, working in the tech industry.
Right.
With the help of Dave.
What city was that?
That was in Alameda mostly.
Alameda.
Yeah, I was living in Alameda, outside of Oakland, near Emeryville, near San Francisco, and just north of San Jose.
Yeah, so they're right in the heart of it all, right?
Not really, but they called it, some people called it the East Bay and whatever, but whatever.
Sure.
Anyways, you could basically, with your car, if you had a car, get access to almost anything in California.
Yeah.
Right? If you were determined enough. That would be like saying I have access to BC.
Yeah.
Right? But of course, California is much higher density.
Yeah,
much more interesting cities. Yeah, it's all right there. And of course, California has even a bigger population than Canada.
Yeah.
So it's very dense. But the thing about it was, I was mentioning to you in the car, is once you live and work there, all the things that you worked towards experiencing and getting really doesn't become an issue. You could do it any time. And the funny thing was, is because of the fact that I could do these things at any given time, it wasn't as important. I had a relationship while I was down there, and I had other interests that became at the forefront. But even if I was still interested in this stuff via either eBay or Amazon, and there wasn't even Amazon really yet. It was just beginning to be as it is now.
It's still primarily books and
Yeah.
that kind of media.
But between those two vendors and buying stuff online and everything else with the things you needed, much more easier access to everything.
Yes.
If you couldn't get it by mail order, you could find and search for stores that had things. And because you were making US money, buying stuff was easier if you were making good money.
Yes.
Buying things was a lot easier. You didn't deal with an exchange rate. If you had your car, whether you hit Emeryville, San Francisco, Oakland, places like San Jose, going down, you could hit places like San Leandro, and any of the cities in between. If you really wanted something, and no matter how clandestine, you could find it in the States, and you could get it, whether by mail order or by purchasing, by going to the store itself. Make a phone call. It's funny, I remembered one of the things that you didn't really have to do as much as here is make long distance calls. Sure. If you had a landline, it wasn't as hard to make calls to places far away in the state as it was here. Like there, far was Sacramento. Yeah. Phoning Sacramento was long distance.
Yes, your area of coverage
was very
really
big,
yeah.
Right? And when the cell phones came in, and it was the same thing. It was literally unlimited, even across the country. Now, so if we look back on the road trips, if I had lived down there for 7 years, and I was really ambitious, I probably could have started my own service to do like what did they call it, escrow.
Yes.
And guys that want stuff, and people did ask me for stuff, I would bring it back with, but it wasn't anything important or anything that I had to send that was important, because I was like, I can't send that because that's kind of the border thing, right? It's illegal. But for anything that they wanted, it wasn't anything that was really that big a deal to get.
At this time, escrow type services were rare, but they were probably very, very useful. And the most common type would be the ones that obviously would be ones that obviously originate in Japan, and then people could buy stuff in Japan, and then pack them up or whatever, and then send them over in a big lot or a big box, back to the U.S. or into Canada. The other type of escrow services that obviously were very convenient for us in Canada would be those that would allow you to buy stuff off of eBay or Amazon, but they wouldn't they themselves, the sellers, would not want to send them to Canada. They would require a U.S. address. Now, I had paired up with the Abbotsford Animation Club, and they had a post office box on the other side of the border in Washington State at Sumas. Sumas and Point Roberts were very close, to the border, and they had places where you could get post office boxes, and then you could then send stuff to the post office box. Then you can go over the border, pick them up, collect up your mail and your stuff that you mailed yourself, and then you can bring them across the line. So obviously, living in other places further away, you could do the same thing. You could have all your eBay purchases, your Amazon purchases that you got, and then you could have them sent to a U.S. address. Have some person, combine, get them together and combine them into a box or something, and then ship them to you. Or a very common thing to do is that, maybe you are planning to go to a convention or something, like Anime America, Anime Expo. Get a bunch of your stuff that you want or order from eBay and whatnot. Get them all together. Send them to a location close to the convention, so that when you're at the convention or whatever, you could either meet or spend some time to actually go to this particular location and actually pick up your stuff, and then you can add it to your stuff that you bought from the convention, and then there we go, right? So that it's sort of a multi-purpose type trip to bring your stuff and get back. Because again, physical media sometimes and physical products might be very, very hard to get across the line, especially with a lot of these regulations and all that kind of stuff when you get into customs, and it might be easier for you to to organize it before you go across the line. So again, yes, these escrow services would be really, really highly useful, and they're not. Listen, they're really useful, but a lot of people weren't aware of them because there wasn't really a good way to advertise that you did this kind of service or the service kind of available. So it is a little bit difficult, but they do exist, and they were very, very useful at this time.
It was easier to get, especially from eBay. Yeah. Right? So I think the thing that you have now is the reach better? Can I get some things easier than I did back then? Not really. And it's still very expensive, even though the logistics is better. So anything that I was interested in, I'm looking across the board when it comes to food, services, products, things that you're interested in doing. Yeah. Even though there was a higher population, there was some. Here's the funny thing that you learn living down there and through the road trips. And this is not to disparage Americans, although it may sound like it. But a lot of the Americans are really quite ignorant of our country.
Yes.
Did you notice that?
Yes.
On our road trips? And when I was living and working down there, it was the same. Even people from other countries were very ignorant of what Canada was.
Well, yeah, they think we live in igloos and
had polar bears or pet seals were on our lawns, and I'm like, are you guys insane? No, it's not like tundra for the whole country,
Yeah.
right? But obviously these people either never visited or they had no clue,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So that was one thing I noticed quite glaringly and polarized was
Yeah.
people's opinion about what Canada was
I
like.
think there's also a very small, like not very, very small, but less than 20-30% of the people in the U.S. Have a passport.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's not a really small figure like one digit or something like that, but yeah.
So they don't even
The vast
travel.
majority of people
They
in
don't
the
travel out of the
yeah,
US.
Do not carry a passport.
Wow. Well, so much for that. So I guess after Trump, it's going to be a little harder for them to get away. But the thing about it was with living there and working there, despite the things I had access to, I could say this now, I really don't miss it because it was a heck of a hassle to move it all back too.
Yeah.
Right.
Other thing that was probably the biggest issue that most people have, when doing things with the U.S. Like you probably had access to a lot of things that people would be, sort of like people would are fringely interested into or whatever, right? Let's say it's
Yep. Firearms,
firearms or replicas or a lot of people are into that
Knives.
swords, and
yeah, any of that stuff that was like borderline.
ASPs
Yeah.
and butterfly knives and all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Those are all the
Yeah, but even material
it's
that,
cool to have type of thing.
but even some of the material that you could bring back would be
Yeah.
censored in Canada or
Yeah.
outright banned, but not in the States.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be into some freaky deaky stuff and you can get it in the U.S.
Yeah, so the issue was to acquire this stuff was probably not that difficult
No.
to get there. The usual problem is how to get it out of the country to Canada.
If you intended to
Yeah.
move back.
Exactly, because that's what I'm saying. Like,
But here's the thing that's interesting, and this is really on the same subject of living and working there versus getting this stuff. And I can talk about some of the interesting things I could get down there, but now all those people that have their green cards, that have their work visa, after Trump by next year, all those people, including my ex, might be in trouble. If you didn't get permanent status like citizenship or whatever, and even if you're naturalized and everything, if they do try to push through that they don't want these people there for whatever reason, that's going to be very interesting. Whether you have a green card or citizenship or whatever,
yeah.
right? But getting back to living and working down there, I mean, when I was working and living there making US money, one of the things I always show people, and I don't think I ever showed you, was I went to eBay one time. And for some stupid reason, I wanted to get Parker Brothers ROM the Space Knight, which was an analog chipped plastic toy that made weird noises and lights.
Okay.
And it was a robot where you could plug in different weapons and it would make all these analog sounds.
Okay.
Now, there was a Marvel comic book that sort of sold it, but when Parker Brothers came out with it, nobody bought it. It even looked like the one that they tried to sell.
Yeah.
The real toy actually looks kind of creepier and uglier, but I got one. I ended up getting one. And what's funny is I could have never gotten it in Canada because it would have been exchange and it would have been harder to put a bid on one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because, Canada and US also has separate eBay vendors,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So stuff like that I got back then, it was things like that I could get that I ended up bringing back,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if you want to go edgy, and this may be going on your Patreon or whatever, I mean, porn
Oh yeah. Yeah.
was not a big deal.
Yeah.
Anything.
All that doujinshi I picked up when back.
Yeah.
Okay, so I hope you found that really interesting, and I always find it really interesting, to go and talk to some of the old people because they always bring up stories that I sort of sometimes forget, or I don't quite have the exact wording sometimes because I don't want to say something in regards to in about someone's story, when they can say it properly themselves because I might get some details wrong or whatever. So it's always better that you get the information straight from them. As well as it's they always have some different perspective that maybe I just kind of forgot about, because so much time has passed. Sometimes I tend to forget them. So it's always good to to have good conversation about that. Again, I will be doing more of them, so stay tuned for that. All right. So until next time, I will see you again.